America's Voice Live, America's fastest growing news program. With Tudor Dixon.
The United States will be the leaders.
And Steve Gruber.
To me, it sounds like a down payment on a 2022 election they know is not going to go well.
Delivering the latest news, observations, and opinions. With the entire Real America's Voice team. America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. It's Friday, July 16, 2021. I'm Steve Gruber. So good to have you here on a Friday. In the headlines today, is President Biden considering some kind of American intervention involving Cuba? Well, it is what he said on Thursday. We will take a much closer look. Texas Democrats are still on the run, desperately avoiding a vote on election integrity in that state. And in Los Angeles, masks are no longer being suggested. They are being required, even if you're fully vaccinated. Is this following the science? We'll ask the people that know best. But first, the war on free speech in America has revealed a jaw-dropping revelation, with the White House admitting that it flags posts on Facebook and censors and tells the company what should be removed for being inaccurate or misleading. Listen.
In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
Problematic posts. Facebook has also admitted to Congress that it removes or fact checks, as it says, information relating to COVID and vaccines on both Facebook and Instagram, other topics as well. But now we know it's the White House, censoring the free speech of millions of Americans. There have also been reports recently of the Biden administration planning to work with cell phone companies to fight alleged vaccine and pandemic misinformation by, again, so-called fact-checking our text messages in real time. In real time, that's right, the government silencing anyone they don't agree with right down the line on social media, now right in the palm of your hands. Ryan Hartwick is joining me. He is a Facebook whistleblower. And Ryan, I am rarely shocked, but shocked I am today. The American government is censoring American citizens in real time in violation of the U.S. Constitution. They obviously don't seem to care, and they act as if they must do it. We should be thanking them to protect us from ourselves and our neighbors. We might as well be in Cuba, some would think. What do you say?
Hey, Steve. Yeah, thanks for having me on today. When I worked for Facebook, we received instructions from Facebook to flag, problematic posts and flag trends. But seeing this come from the White House is shocking, and it's new, and it really just gives more ammunition to Trump's recent lawsuit, because it proves that Facebook is a state actor. They're acting as a quasi-government agency, and they're flagging these posts. They're acting on behalf of the government. So that's the issue here, is we can't have Facebook, going in, receiving instruction from the White House, acting as a state actor, and that's part of Trump's lawsuit, is the difference between being given permission to censor our posts versus being actively instructed.
Well, then you've got a couple of other things I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into, Ryan. Mark Zuckerberg gave $300 million for local election officials to buy gear. Election gear for the 2020 election. We know that happened. We also know that they were involved with keeping people quiet while amplifying others. They also hide behind Rule 230 so that they cannot be pursued or sued by anyone. They're protected by the government while doing the government's dirty work, for lack of another term. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, those are all exactly the truth. In my upcoming book, Behind the Mask of Facebook, I detail many of those examples where they're promoting posts, where they're protecting people like Greta Thunberg, protecting people like Don Lemon, while censoring, pro-life posts. So they really are choosing ideological sides, and it's a dangerous precedent. I really hope that Trump's lawsuit makes some progress. There's also some other legal strategies being explored, like just suing the government itself under the Fifth Amendment for due process, because if Facebook is indeed acting as an arm of the FCC, censoring our posts and then we don't have any way to we don't have any recourse. They're depriving us of liberty and property, and we don't have a legal recourse.
And they're spying on us in secret. Now they've admitted to it, as if to say, well, you should say thank you. They're almost belligerent, arrogant about it, and it concerns me because it does violate the right of protection against unlawful search and seizure, because here they are looking at, what might be a private message between myself and my wife, or myself and my sick mother, or whatever it might be. Why is that any of their business, and why did anybody think it was okay to give them the keys to that car? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, they're abusing their authority that Congress gave them. A perfect analogy is if you're inside the McDonald's and McDonald's wants to kick you out, they call the authority. They call the police to kick you out, to trespass you. But here what we're seeing is that Facebook is McDonald's and they're also the police. So they're enforcing their policy against the American people, and it's a blatant abuse of Section 230. It's a blatant abuse of the Fifth Amendment.
And yet, I don't expect anything to be done about it anytime soon. Ryan, I greatly appreciate you being here. I'm sure we'll talk about this in the near future. Speaking of the internet, protests continue in Cuba as reports of internet blackouts are now surfacing, as well as a continued lack of basic resources for the Cuban people, including food, water, and hygiene supplies. President Biden is now considering helping protesters in Cuba. At least that's what he said Thursday. During a press conference, Biden talked about the widespread internet blackouts imposed by the government, saying the U.S. is considering whether the technology is there to help. Here he is.
With regard to Cuba, Cuba is unfortunately, a failed state in repressing their citizens. There are a number of things that we would consider doing to help the people of Cuba, but it would require a different circumstance or a guarantee that they would not be taken advantage of by the government. One of the things that you did not ask, but we're considering, is they have cut off access to the internet. We're considering whether we have the technological ability to reinstate that access. And I think I've answered your questions.
You have the technological ability to spy on American citizens. You have the technological ability to look at my text messages in real time, but you're not sure if you can get Cuba back up and running? That's an interesting comment. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida also pushing for Biden to intervene and reinstate internet service to the Cuban people. Listen.
They shut down the internet. They don't want the truth to be out. They don't want people to be able to communicate. And so one of the things I think we should be able to do with our private companies or with the United States is to provide some of that internet service via satellite. We have companies on the Space Coast that launch these things. So that's going to be some calls I'm going to make to see what are the options from some Florida companies to be able to do it.
DeSantis also calling on young military members in Cuba to overthrow their government. When it comes to silencing people online, it strangely seems like the U.S. and Cuba have that in common today. Turning now to Texas Democrats, they're still being called out for their political stunt of fleeing the state to avoid voting on election integrity bills, and at the same time calling for an end to the filibuster in the U.S. Senate, which, of course, has the same outcome and the same effect, stopping a bill that you do not like. Texas Governor Greg Abbott went after President Biden personally this week for calling the new voting law in Texas Jim Crow laws. Here he is.
The issues about elections have been going on for a long time, but however, I want to inject another thing that it's about, and it shows increasingly that Biden really is kind of losing control of his own narrative and losing control of what he's trying to convey to the American people.
Now, Joe Biden isn't the only one being called out. The Texas Democrats that fled the state also being criticized, in part for this tweet. Yesterday, one of the Democrats posted a picture saying, "You bet we're recognizing and honoring our country's heritage. As most Texans, though, this is what we're doing tonight, using whatever's accessible, washing our clothes in the sink." I mean, come on. Really? You're in a hotel room in Washington, D.C. One Republican commentator calling the tweet super strange and saying, well, as you know, you wouldn't have to do this if you were at home in Texas doing your job instead of being here to do tourist things and gaslight about election bills, not actually accomplishing anything. Governor Abbott, by the way, said the Democrats are still receiving their daily stipend and that they will be arrested once they come back to Texas. We'll see if he delivers on that threat. Meanwhile, apparently one good political stunt deserves another. While Democrats in Texas are being threatened with arrest by their governor, Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty was arrested yesterday by U.S. Capitol Police. Beatty was protesting at the Capitol in favor of the euphemistic For the People Act, calling for her supporters to march in the streets. Less than an hour later, Capitol Police zip-tied her and a small number of other protesters, saying they were demonstrating in a prohibited area on Capitol grounds. You can be sure getting arrested on camera was a big part of why the protest was held in the first place. In California, the masks are back, and it's not just some suggestion. No, it's mandatory. Starting tomorrow, everyone, regardless if you're vaccinated or not, will have to wear masks indoors in Los Angeles. On Thursday, public health officials reported 1,537 new COVID-19 cases, the highest mark since March. The state has also seen the quick spread of the Delta variant. This week, Sacramento and Yolo counties also reintroduced recommendations to wear masks indoors. The Public Health Department will release its full guidelines and guidance later today, and soon you may be impacted by mask mandates too. You see the head of the largest nurses union calling now on the CDC to reinstate mask mandates nationwide. Here she is.
It doesn't give us any pleasure to say, I told you so.
But as president of the largest nurses union in the country, she helped draft this letter, which, among other things, asked the CDC to reinstate the recommendation for everyone to wear masks, vaccinated or not.
I understand the desire to have a quote-unquote nice summer, but we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
According to the nurses union, the new daily COVID cases have increased 16% week over week. And a sad story, one police officer dead, 4 more injured following a standoff Thursday in Texas. The suspect, 22-year-old Omar Soto Shavira, had a gun, was walking around acting strangely, said the reports. Officers on scene called in a police negotiator who tried to talk to the man, but Soto Shavira was hostile and refused to talk to police at all. Minutes later, he opened fire, killing the commander of the SWAT team, Sergeant Josh Bartlett, and injuring 4 more, one of whom had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. Texas Rangers have taken over the investigation, and police are still not sure of a motive in this case. After the break, Arizona State Senator Sonny Borrelli will be breaking down yesterday's Arizona election hearing and the latest on the audit of the November election results. This is America's Voice Live. We'll be right back.